Good morning, everyone. My name is Judy Blake, and I am the Leadership and Advocacy Coordinator for Family to Family Network. We are so grateful that you have joined us this morning, and we are so pleased to be partnering with the Lone Star Lend program. So in my world, I have two jobs. One is for Family to Family Network, and the other is Lend. Lend stands for Leadership, Education, in Autism and Neurodevelopmental Disabilities. And I'm so happy that Hazel Go, one of our trainees, said to me that she wanted to partner and collaborate and have a program or series of programs within the Asian community. And I said, I'm all in because we want to empower families and educate them. And this was a wonderful opportunity for collaboration. So I just wanted to take a quick moment. Angela, where are you on my screen? Angela is one of my colleagues. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, everyone. How are you? Good to see you guys.
Thank you, Angela. Angela does our accounting. She makes sure our numbers are in order, and she is terrific, and I just love working with her. And I'm really happy that Jenny is on. Jenny is one of our former trainees, so that's really neat. So thank you for joining us, Jenny. So hi, Jenny. So if it's okay with you all, like I said, this is going to be recorded. And one of the things I love to do is to promote what we do. So I was going to take a group picture. If you are camera shy, think you're having a bad hair day, don't want your picture seen, that's okay. Michael, I don't think you ever have a bad hair day, do you?
No,
you're lucky. Yeah, that's a man for you. Yeah. And so if you want to change your name real quick, I'll give you a minute. But we do post these on social media. And I'm going to go ahead and take a quick picture. So, oh, Anna, thank you. Okay. So 1, 2, 3. Perfect. So just a couple of housekeeping notes. We are going to be having you write questions in the chat box. And then we are going to address those questions after the presentations. And then if you could, please register in the chat box with the name that you use to register with. Please sign in. So that way I can mark you as present. So I know sometimes people are borrowing other people's laptops or tablets or phones. So if you could, please sign in the chat box with the name that you registered with, that would be great. Other than that, I think we're good to go. And Hazel, thank you so much for partnering with Family to Family Network. And just to the audience, there are some things that I will be posting in the chat box at the end of the presentations. We will be asking you to complete a very, very brief survey. So if you could do that for us, we would really appreciate it. These programs are grant funded, and it's really important that our funders see the results and to make sure that people were satisfied and they learned from these presentations. So please make sure that you complete those. And then we're also going to post the flyer for session 2, which will be in 2 weeks. So many thanks to all of you for joining us. Hazel, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Judy. Yeah, thank you everyone for making the time today on Saturday. I know that it's been a really trying few weeks, especially with the whole cold storm and everything. And I hope that everyone and your family and your houses and your pipes are doing okay. Please, so like Judy said, please type your full name in the chat box if you haven't already. And also we are recording this talk. It's more for documentation purposes because of the summary notes that we will be sending out to you after the talk. It will take about a week before we are able to send these out to you because we're also getting them translated in Mandarin and Vietnamese as well for anyone who would prefer to have it in other languages. And so, yeah, we have a range of panel speakers for you today. Here we go. And so, like I said, welcome everybody. We have the wonderful Jennifer Chiang, we have Judy Ng, and we have Michael Conte. So let me go around introducing all of them. So first, let's welcome Jennifer Chiang. She is an associate judge and has engaged in legal practice since 2009. Her legal practice includes commercial litigation, business formation, real estate transactions, estate planning, and probate. In 2014, she founded the Chiang Law Firm, and today it's a fast-growing full-service civil law firm serving clients in the greater Houston area and abroad. In 2015, the Sugar Land City Council unanimously appointed her as the Associate Municipal Judge for the city of Sugar Land. So Jennifer, if you could take a moment or two to introduce yourself.
Hi, everybody. My name is Jennifer Chang, and as Hazel said, I am an attorney and a part-time municipal court judge in Sugar Land. And I wanted to congratulate all of you for showing up here and to empowering yourselves with information. One of my passions is to make sure that the people know what legal remedies they have for their situation. And especially when you're thrust into a situation where, you know, a loved one has received a diagnosis, you know, what do you do? I hope to give you the information that you need to know about what your legal remedies, what your responsibilities, and what the right strategies are for you and your family so that you can take care of each other in the best and most compassionate and you know, most advantageous way possible, because there's lots of pitfalls for people who think they really just want to do the right thing, but they just don't have the right information. So thank you for coming. Thank you for your attention. And thank you, Hazel, for having us speak about this really important issue.
Thank you, Jennifer. And if you want to hear more from her after today, she does have an individual talk coming up in April. So look out for the email when it comes around. So next, Julie. So Julie is a licensed marriage and family therapist, as well as a licensed professional counselor supervisor. She also has provided counseling services for children, couples, families over the last 13 years. She has experiences working in outpatient, residential, hospital, a whole bunch of settings, as you can see, private practice settings as well. She currently co-owns 2 private practices in the Missouri City and Pearland area. So her topics of interest include management of anxiety, depression, parenting support, ADHD support, as well as helping couples repair after infidelity. So Julie, if you could take a minute or two to introduce yourself.
Sure. Thank you guys all for being here, and thank you, Hazel, for inviting me to this panel and to speak on the matter. I am a therapist in the area. I have been providing services, like Hazel mentioned, for the last about 13 to 14 years. Currently, my the main setting that I'm operating out of is the private practices in Pearland in Missouri City. And we provide services for children starting from 5 and up, sometimes younger, depending on what their needs are. We work with individuals as well as whole families, sometimes spanning several generations. And we are mainly here to just provide support and education to the community on you know, some of the challenges that families are having, and certainly around this diagnosis of autism. My main goal today is just to provide you all with some hope and some support, and to be able to kind of shift the perspective and destigmatize sometimes when people think about mental health or diagnosis or, you know, having any sort of disability, and to shift the perspective of trying to see things in a way where we also see the benefits and the gifts and the talents of some of these things that we call disorders, and to really help parents specifically be able to give their child and themselves kind of a positive view of, yes, these are challenges, and yes, these are some limitations that might come with this diagnosis. However, there are also so many gifts and so many talents that these kids and young adults possess that we can't overlook as well. And so my hope is just to kind of offer you guys a perspective on this that can be more helpful and hopeful along the way. So I'm really happy to be here today.
Thank you, Julie. All right, and last but not least, we have Michael Conte. He is a board certified behavioral analyst. He is an entrepreneur with 13 years in a growing company to 3 large facilities serving 700 over children and employees. He also started a nonprofit in Houston called Project Autism for 6 years. He also worked with a residential program for a year with extreme behavior. He has also spoken with the Houston Police Academy about special needs de-escalation techniques. He also has trained 700 staff throughout his entire career and counting. He has also trained over 20 BCBAs, which is one of the highest rates for a private ABA facility. So Michael, if you could take a moment or two to introduce yourself.
Sure, and thank you, Hazel, and I'm excited here on a Saturday to kind of talk and share. So, echoing a lot of things that have said before, I am a big fan of the neurodiversity movement. Just realizing that just because someone thinks a little differently, there's still many paths that can, put that child and young adult in the best positions possible. I am a board certified behavior analyst, so I come from that framework. I've spent a lot of time with young kids and also young adults. I am also a certified coach, and so I actually spend a lot of time now working directly with families to really set up the home environment to really improve on the strengths of a child and young adult. So I kind of use the mix of behavior analysis and use the mix of coaching. And I'm also a big fan of wellness. And so I think, we spend a lot of time focusing on a child making improvement or a young adult, which is important, but really it's the entire family. And so if you create a good environment where wellness is the forefront of what people are striving for, it does a great job of keeping everyone balanced and really helping everyone make significant progress.
Thank you, Michael. So before we go into the main meat of today, I just wanted to say, if you have any questions, please feel free to type them in the chat. We will review it when appropriate or towards the end. You can also private message Judy Blake if you wish for your question to remain anonymous. That's completely fine. If we are not able to get to all of your questions, we'll try to provide the answers after the talk when we send out the summary notes. At the end of the talk, there will be a survey posted in the chat box, and please do complete the survey. As Judy said earlier, this is for grant money. And if you would like, you can also get a copy of the recording for this. Just let us know. All right, so let me close that out so you can see our faces clearer. And let's begin today. So one of you just jump in whenever. So what is the first thing that you would say or provide to a parent when their child is first diagnosed? Don't be shy.
So I'll go ahead and jump in, even though I will flat out say, probably coming to me is not the first thing that someone who just received a diagnosis for their child should do. They should probably talk to Julie or Michael first, because honestly, you're probably going through a lot of emotional issues. I know in my family, just a little bit about myself. I was born here in the United States, but my family and my mother was actually born here in the United States as well, but my father wasn't. And I know that I'm Chinese, and in the Chinese culture, there's a huge stigma on mental health issues and having a crazy diagnosis. And by crazy, I mean like you're crazy, you're bipolar, you're you have autism, you have Down syndrome, whatever. And really the attitude was probably up until maybe even until now is to basically withdraw and retreat into your family and hide your child and be ashamed. that something was wrong with you and your genetics or whatever. And so, and that again, that's more of a Michael and a Julie thing to deal with, because you need to come to, I think you should come to terms with the diagnosis, the impact it's going to have on your life, and how to address it. Also, talk to your doctors as well. But maybe fourth on the list, if you're going to come and talk to an attorney, you should talk to an attorney about, okay, well, now that I have this child and I know that I'm going to have these struggles, and maybe, and that's, and the problem is it's hard to know what exactly the path is going to be going forward, because especially for a flexible diagnosis like autism, or spectrum, I should say, a spectrum diagnosis like autism, your child could be high functioning autistic, and that could just mean, well, they don't really get along with their peers, but they can program the heck out of this computer, which is an actual client that I have. And her daughter is receiving full scholarships to college and has started up 2 companies already to produce like t-shirts and other things for girls in STEM. Like, she's probably going to be fine. She probably doesn't need to take advantage of a lot of the supports of special needs trusts and qualifying for Medicaid that someone who is low functioning Down syndrome, low functioning autism, where you're looking at continued care for the rest of that child's life. And so while that is, you know, getting your estate planning and getting all those pieces in place is incredibly important, talk to Julie and Michael first. That'd be my recommendation. And then come to me about, you know, maybe 6 months later, once you've already talked to them and you've started having things, you started processing what this means for yourself and your family.
And you're absolutely right, Jennifer, to kind of hop on what you're saying, that it is an emotional process. And this process for everybody may be very different. You may be going into your pediatrician's office already suspecting that your child has an autism diagnosis. And so it's going to be a very different outcome for you than somebody that has no idea, that maybe doesn't want to believe it. And so for everybody here to understand that it is a range of different emotions, and you can vacillate between acceptance and denial and shock and grief and anger and confusion and all of those different emotions. And so, yes, when I am receiving a lot of these families and parents, my first step is, again, to just say, it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. And we're all going to do this together. And we're all going to develop a team approach, because you're going to have different providers involved in the care of your child. And it's not just going to be all on you to figure everything out. And so you're going to have your pediatrician, you're going to have your teachers in your school system, you're going to have your attorneys if you need that. You're going to have, you know, support systems with other families that may be also kind of dealing with the same thing you are. And so I like to just reassure them, we're going to get through this. And then, of course, you know, I also give them the foundation of the psychoeducation that they need to understand, what is autism, right? Like, what does this really mean? Why is this happening? What are some of the things I need to be watchful for, or maybe helping them understand, like, why is my child behaving this way? Or why is my child having these types of challenges? Is it autism related, or is it something else? And what we find with a lot of families is that, you know, the autism spectrum diagnosis may be one issue, but along that comes the anxiety, comes the depression, comes the isolation, comes the difficulty with the family interactions, because, you know, the siblings are involved, and the siblings oftentimes don't understand, or not at an age where they can understand why some of these difficulties are present. And so I guess the short answer is just, we go through all of the education. We really instill families with the knowledge and the understanding that they need to figure out, what are we looking at here? What are we going to be dealing with? And then also on top of that, you know, it is connecting them to the right networks for, you know, maybe it is the ABA therapy, or maybe it is an occupational or speech therapist that the child needs. And maybe it's connecting with the school to help them put an IEP in plan so that they can have the correct supports in place to have the accommodations that their child needs to be successful in school. Sometimes it is connecting them to private schools because public schools may not be appropriate for their learning. So that's kind of my job in all of this, is to help coordinate the services. And then as a therapist, it is to provide the emotional support and to help them through some of the relationship interactions that are difficult for the kids and the families.
Julie, I love your "it will be okay." Something that I say often.
Mhm.
And, I think that's really the important sentiment. It will be okay. Autism, is just a different way of thinking. And I think now we're a global society. Now we can see all these different varied people of all types. And, in the past, it kind of felt like, what is my child going to do? Well, now there's plenty of examples of adults on the spectrum who are thriving in many different areas. And, there may be times some of your hopes and dreams might have to change. There may be some things that, a child or adult can't do. But, I think, when you think about autism, it's really trying to focus on areas of growth, success, and areas of strengths of a person. And, that kind of goes for all of us in terms of, most of the times when I'm talking with parents, school districts are telling what their kids can't do. Everyone's just saying, these are your limitations. And I think it's just nice to really shift focus and let's say, okay, well, let's turn something that could be a self-stimulatory behavior, but let's modify that and make it functional. Let's give something that, this young adult already enjoys, but let's convert that to something that is meaningful to them and as a family as a whole. So, I'm just a big fan of, there are many ways up this mountain. Don't feel that because the first path that you thought would happen is blocked, that there's still not a path to the top. And as long as you look at it from that positive standpoint, you get to some amazing places. Because the one thing about the autism spectrum, or just the brain in general, is, some of these nuances, like what Jennifer said, this, young lady who's starting businesses with STEM, there's so many things in the world that need assistance. And there are some people that are uniquely qualified to work on things that, quote unquote, neurotypicals are not as good at. And so I look at it as a challenge to help that young adult or child find the purpose. And I think that keeps the focus going in a positive direction.
I love how everyone was talking more about like the emotional piece as compared to like, oh, here are the supports, which we often forget when like a family's going through that first diagnosis and things like that. We kind of need to think about the parents, how they're dealing with it, how the siblings dealing with it. And then let's slowly walk through the different steps, which I love how all of you have all mentioned that. That's great to hear. Yeah. So in terms of going through all the different stages, what kind of other supports? It sounds like definitely everyone has the emotional piece in hand, but what other supports could you provide for the family in these early stages?
So I guess I'll go ahead and talk first again. So like I said, the legal side is, it's a little bit multifaceted because there's challenges that parents have when their child is just receiving their diagnosis, but there's also the piece of what happens to my child when I'm gone. And what you have to be, like what you do for each step is different. So for example, as an attorney, I don't do this myself, but I do, again, because I have so many clients whose children have gone through this. There are attorneys and people who specifically just support families in developing the IEP. That's it. That's all they do. People who help interface with the school districts just to get the right special education program or IEP for the child. There's, as far as legal supports as well, for example, I've had children who have, in my practice, because I've also done CPS and juvenile work, where, low intellect children have been arrested for, just responding poorly in the classroom. Well, he hit the teacher. That's an assault. Really? Because that whenever he feels restrained, he just fights back, and that's just kind of what the kids do. Anyway, and so again, that's when you need an attorney to help you to address if a child with an intellectual disability, autism diagnosis, any spectrum diagnosis gets involved with the legal system. You'll have a different kind of attorney. Again, did it in the past, but that's another avenue for lawyers to get involved. The piece that I deal with the most, though, is how do we create a plan for this child who is about to turn 18 so that they can maintain Medicaid benefits? And so that's when I get involved, and we create a plan for the parents to continue to, maybe if they have money, they can set some money aside for that child in a third-party special needs trust, create a special needs trust for the child for their own personal use, and to create an estate plan strategy. So something with the will to pass money into the third-party special needs trust, so it doesn't get counted against the child when they qualify for Medicaid benefits. Now, just so that everybody here knows, Medicaid is the program for healthcare for indigent Americans. One of the reasons why people really want to qualify for Medicaid specifically is because it does pay for, for nursing care, for housing, for people who are on Medicaid. Now, the problem is you can only have $2,000 in countable assets, and how we get there is what you hire attorneys to do. And a lot of people think, well, okay, all I need to do is just leave everything to my spouse or leave everything to my child indirectly, or worse, I'm going to leave it to their brother because they know to take care of their sister or their brother in the future. No, none of those things will work. I've seen them all fall apart. Things like that fall apart. So please come to an attorney. Let's talk about your specific situation, because what we do for you is not what we're going to do for other people.
I'll go ahead and go next. I like to set up the home environment for success. I always think that's a big key. So when I work with families, I'm really trying to go through the lens of the coaching model and really setting simple objectives, setting simple communication objectives, simple behavior objectives, and then some sort of thing that's either a social skill or just helping to improve on their strengths. So I really look at the home environment. We know that some people on autism spectrum just have sensitivities, and just try to be mindful of that. So I always like for families to create a decompression area. And I think, and it's for everybody, just a place where they can go and kind of crash out, whether they're angry, whether they're too happy. So I like to work from that lens. And then I'm a big fan of wellness. And so what I tell parents all the time is, I see a lot where parents focus all their energy, all their finances on their child, but they do very little for themselves. And so always my first question is, if you're only getting 5 hours of sleep, you're not going to make good decisions, not just for your child, but for yourself. If you're not, having, proper nutrition. So I'm working with the lens of let's help your child, but really it's let's help the whole family understand how these things are important. So I like doing things that are very simple, but really hitting them home, because when those things are at least stabilized, it keeps a little balance within the family. And, it gets really difficult, and we've all been off when it comes, I know the storm did it to all of us. But when we're kind of off, it really kind of hard to get back on track. And so I see a lot of families that are just really unbalanced, just trying to survive the day. And I really try to help them to kind of expand out so that they have a little bit more control. So the third thing I do is really have parents fight for either the morning routine or the evening routine. Both is great, but really there needs to be a tent pole where someone can feel that consistency. And so I usually say first fight for 15 minutes. And so whether it's 15 minutes where the parent gets their own, way to decompress, or setting up, the first 15 minutes to make sure that the day starts as well as possible. And so we kind of troubleshoot it and really kind of analyze using the behavior skills, but really trying to analyze the best ways to start days and to end days. And what I find is that when someone starts to feel grounded in those areas, it really gives them the energy to kind of carry out the rest of their day.
And to jump in, Michael, I totally agree with you. One of the treatment goals that we have often in therapy is to help the family set a routine and set some structure in the home environment. And, all of our kiddos, benefit from knowing what is going to happen on a consistent basis day to day, and having sort of that wake up time, that breakfast time, that, after school time, the chill out, the homework, and then the bedtime, and having some sort of consistency around that can certainly help to eliminate a lot of the kids that have these meltdowns or have these transition difficulties. Just having that consistency and routine can really help. So we definitely kind of look at what areas need to be tweaked, what areas can we sort of let go of some of our expectations and say, we're not going to fight over this every day. It's obviously something maybe that the child just cannot meet the expectation of, and we may need to adjust what we expect in that moment. And along with that, also, one of the treatment goals is to assess the whole family system, right? How are we communicating? How are we getting along? What are the rules in this home that can lead to wellness, Michael, as you put it, and lead to better outcomes and lead to a positive way forward? And if there are challenges that haven't been dealt with, that's certainly an area that comes up in therapy a lot. If there has been any previous trauma or any relationship difficulty between perhaps the parents, basically if the parents are not aligned in how to address some of these behaviors or concerns with the children, that is obviously going to be an impediment to helping the child get as far as they can. And so we support a lot of the parenting, kind of strategies around how do we deal with the meltdowns? How do we deal with the difficulties of school, sometimes the sensory issues that come up when we can't go to a regular setting where our child is going to be okay and can adapt, and so we give a lot of support around that.
It sounds like there's so many different considerations for the child and the family. And it sounds like there's so many different areas to consider. Not only we're talking about the child, and Jennifer, you're sharing about the future, the financial part of things. Judy and Michael, you're talking about the child, the parents, aligning the parents, even considering other different family members. And I love how you all three are referencing each other in terms of like what you are saying. So when you're talking about a child, when there's so many different professionals involved, how do you see yourself collaborating with other professionals to support the child? And especially how does that look like when the issues are so multifaceted?
I'll go first for this one. And I like this analogy. It is vital that there's great collaboration amongst a school, a provider, everyone else that are the key stakeholders for that child. So the analogy that I put, if there's not good communication, it's like going to a Thanksgiving dinner and no one knows who's bringing what. So it's almost, three people will bring green beans, there's 2 turkeys, and no one brought pie. And so that's why it's important that the speech pathologist has conversations with the school, or the family counselor. There's conversations going on, and it's difficult because the providers won't necessarily talk themselves. So you're the conduit. You're the one that has to kind of be the one to kind of pass all these ideas to each other. So what I usually recommend for folks, and a simple thing to do, on one sheet of paper, write down the most important objectives that you want to get done for your child. And you make sure every person that gets in contact with your child has that one sheet of paper. So you can update it every couple of months, but now everyone knows this is our behavior intervention plan when we do this. These are the things that I want you to push for communication. These are the things that make them very happy. These are the things that do not make them happy. And in that way, everyone's starting to work together on the same page. So I'm a huge fan of collaboration because it really helps the quality of all the treatments.
Just to chime in, Michael, I think you covered it, but collaboration is key and it's pivotal and it's necessary, and you cannot treat a child without having collaboration, especially in this situation. And so definitely find the providers that are willing to collaborate and that will reach out to everybody that is working with your child to stay in connection and to understand what is the treatment plan, what have you guys been working on? Because sometimes, as a therapist, I like to check in with my ABA providers because I don't want to do anything that is going to be against sort of what they're working on. And we really need to be aligned in what we're teaching our families and what we're teaching our kids and how to deal with certain situations. And I get a release of information from the families that I work with saying I have authorization and permission to reach out to your doctor if I'm worried about something, or to reach out to the school if I'm seeing some concerns or if I need to advocate for your child. And so definitely, it takes a village. We cannot do this alone. And we all have to be able to reach out to each other in the circle that we've kind of, developed for the families, and to be able to be in constant communication about that. And I think this is really helpful for me because, Jennifer, I don't really get to see the legal side of a lot of this as a therapist. And so I'm really learning a lot. And I think that you are a great resource for us to put forward to our families and for them to know there is legal support and there is somebody that will help you know your rights, because a lot of our families are just swimming and trying to get out of the emotional component of it. They never really get to the end of really rationalizing long-term future plans. What do I need to set up for this kid to be successful when I'm gone, basically? So this is extremely helpful for me as well.
And I just to throw something out here as well. And by the way, I'm learning a lot from you guys as well. But there's a lot of groups out there too. I know people don't really like groups right now because of COVID. But at the same time, it is so empowering to be with another, 10 families that are all going through this together. And you can share resources and stories and figure out strategies of, what worked for your child and that maybe you just didn't even think about, because Julie is one person, Michael is one person. They will interact with you and try to support you. But there's also so many other families out there that can act as that support. And if of anything, just help share information about what other resource providers there are out there, or does anybody have the phone number for the the special education coordinator for Fort Bend ISD or resort, Alvin ISD, whichever school district you're working in. And it's amazing to have those people there for you to talk about strategies for your kids and support for your families as well.
I'm so happy that this session is not only benefiting the families here, but also for each other in terms of professionals. I'm really glad for that. I know you all talked about community resources and I just saw someone just post in the chat about community resources as well. So what are the types of resources that parents might need to think about beyond like each of your disciplines that you regularly find in terms of like navigating this journey?
Sorry,
Well, I
Hazel, I was
know-
reading the
oh.
chat while you were speaking. Can you repeat your question? I'm so sorry.
No problem. So yeah, because we were talking about like resources and community resources and having parents to feel supported. So I was just wondering as well, like what are the types of resources that parents might need to think about when navigating this journey? And I think Jennifer was about to chime in.
Well, no, I was thinking about Hope for Three in Fort Bend County is a really great organization that deals specifically with autism families, and really they are that support organization. I know that there's an autism spectrum support group that Allison Stauberg runs, that I know Hazel, actually she was the one who really connected us together, and Allison's a good friend of mine, and we work together a lot, and that's out in Fort Bend, as well as the Arc of Fort Bend is another really good resource for families who are trying to think longer term about financial planning and caring for their children after they're gone. Carrie Axtell is the director of the youth programs out there, and she is a wonderful person, and she and I we've worked together a lot too. So Julie, Michael, can y'all think of any other resources? And like I said, y'all have all kinds of different things.
This
hi,
is
Wendy.
Judy. Hi.
Judy.
So if I could just chime in real quick, everything you mentioned, Jennifer, is spot on. And we work with those organizations as well. I love Allison, Carrie, and Darla Farmer with Hope for Three. Family to Family Network has monthly support groups. So, and we go by age group. So we have birth through early childhood, like the preschool years, and then it's elementary and junior high, and then we have high school, and then we have adults. So Family to Family Network is on Facebook. So if you like our Facebook page, you can see we're always posting which Monday your age group would be the best for you. So I just wanted to add that in there as well.
Great. And I just want to chime in. Hi, I'm actually getting ready for another meeting, so I don't have my screen on. I just want to apologize. I really appreciate all the resources. I know Allison very well. She actually runs the ADDA, the Attention Deficit Group, and I have been to several of the meetings. I actually organized the panel speakers for one of their meetings. And she, obviously with the consolidated planning, they offer a lot of the financial resources for special need families. And I haven't heard you guys mention the Light and Salt Special Need Caring Center. And I'm the director for the Special Need Ministry at Fort Bend Community Church. And we have a junior program and a senior program. And we work very, very closely with Light and Salt. And obviously Light and Salt works very closely in turn with Hope for Three and with ARC and with a lot of the other agencies. But for Chinese and Vietnamese speaking families, we have a very active support group, WeChat support group, where we share a lot of the information. The parents basically can just post a question like, who do I reach out? Like, how do I get the abortion process? And we have consultants and we have parents in that group that we can walk the parents through the process. So, but I'm just really glad to be learning of all these resources. The one biggest question, and Julie, I'm so glad you brought up early intervention, because I'm still new to Houston. I came from New York. I started as a service coordinator and then outside rep, and I was a therapist. I'm a therapist myself. The families in New York, they have service coordinations, they have service coordinators, and they have caseworkers helping them just coordinate everything. And I just, I love what Michael said. I love what Julie said about the collaboration, and I couldn't agree more. But I just want to know, given how overwhelmed the parents already are there places that offer more official service coordinations for families. And, for families, especially with the youngest children, like with the early intervention 0 to 3 and the preschool population 4 to 5. Like we offer assistance to help them navigate the system, but like are there established agencies like here in Houston, Texas, like that can offer? Uh-huh.
Winnie, just to kind of respond to your question, I think that the agency that comes to mind is the Harris Center, which I know they do a lot of work with disabilities. And so I don't know specifically if they have any kind of care coordinator team or anything like that, but
They do, Julie.
Okay.
And if you're in Fort Bend County, it's Texana.
Right.
Texana, yes.
And so if your child qualifies under their, what they call their determination of intellectual disability,
Right.
then they are assigned a service coordinator on the IDD side. And then if they have mental health disabilities, they have case coordination on that side.
Right. I heard that last year they had a budget cut and that early childhood direction program was closed. So that's
No,
why
it's not closed. It's a sliding scale. When my
Okay.
son participated in it, it was free,
okay.
regardless of the parent's income. But
Right.
because of budget cuts over the years, it is a sliding scale. So no, they still have ECI, early childhood intervention. It's
Okay.
just because there are so many children now being diagnosed versus 26 years ago when my son was diagnosed,
Right.
they've had to reduce the number of visits, and there is now a sliding scale.
Right. Okay. That's good to know. Thank you.
Sure.
And I did forget about Texana as a resource. And just as like I said, my clients engaging with Texana, they've in their early childhood programs, they are probably the best resource out here in Fort Bend for that kind of intervention.
I don't have much to add. You guys have done a fantastic job with this question, except for, I call it the College of YouTube, meaning you can find researchers that are doing fantastic things with autism. You can actually go to see some lectures. And so I kind of encourage you guys to take a look at some of the things that are out there. There's some fantastic things about neuroscience that really does help with the brain in general. So I think doing a little bit of that research really comes in handy, and it gives you a better overall view of the brain.
And just to add, in addition to that, I forgot who was it that mentioned the support system, the support groups and the advocacy groups, and just staying connected to other families and other parents and caregivers, and for the kids to stay connected also with their peer groups. At Missouri City Family Counseling, we do offer social skills training groups as well as kind of coping skills groups to just facilitate some of the learning that is involved in developing, friendship skills and communication skills and problem solving skills. And so we try to offer that on a regular rotating basis. Of course, COVID kind of messed up all of that, but we're now getting back into gear about, can we successfully do this through telehealth, or do we need to just wait maybe perhaps till the summertime to start implementing our social skills groups again. I was also going to tell you guys that, Hazel, I sent you a resource list that I put together of the different providers that we usually like to refer out to or recommend to our families. And you've got different support groups and different centers such as Hope for Three. And I don't know if you guys are familiar with, I think it's Cafe Azul. They're she's a Facebook, she's got a Facebook page, and she's always constantly giving out very helpful information to parents. Re-Rock the Spectrum in Missouri City is a sensory gym that is very, very helpful, especially to some of our younger ones, to help get that stimulation, get that integration in their bodies, and for them to just burn some energy sometimes. I've got some ABA providers on there. I've got some, I can't remember, but Hazel, if you have that list, if you want to send it out when you're ready to do so with the summary page, I think you guys will find a lot of useful resources on that.
Yeah, for sure. And definitely with all the resources that we are hearing today, we would send it on to everyone as well when we are sending out the summary in about a week's time to just collate everything. And so to make sure that everyone has these resources, because it's very important that everyone has all of these, especially like when, like Judy said, in this time of COVID, everything has kind of been like jumbled up a little and everyone's still trying to like figure their ground, even though it's been a year, but we still don't really know how things are gonna be for like the next year or so. And I also want to ask, I know it's been a crazy time with COVID and it's definitely affected like in terms of like families, the way they're able to do certain things, the social groups, for example, that's a big thing that has been impacted. And so, how has this affected the way that you work with the families? And do you also see any new problems that the families might face with moving forward?
I know that, I've had to turn many of my things just online. And, I think where we would be without the internet and the ability to do this via Zoom and then still had COVID. So in a weird way, the internet kind of is crazy sometimes when you go on Facebook and go on chat rooms, but it also is really our saving grace throughout this period. So I've been doing a lot of online activities because parents can send me videos. I can still see the behavior. I can still see what's happening inside the home. And so I really, most of my practice now is online. So I actually work with people outside of Houston. I now can expand my reach out to other areas. And I think for all of us on the provider side, it's changed, and I think that's a positive, meaning people who are really good and really compassionate, I think there's lots of opportunity. The biggest drawback is people people can't go to school. People are trying to, have jobs and try to focus and trying to make do. And, I think humans don't do well when structures change. And there's not, every person here on this call has had huge changes to their structure. We're all kind of in a group trauma setting. So I really think just being mindful that every human being I meet is going through trauma. And if I just go with that lens, it really kind of softens me up. And I think the same thing for families is, it's okay to ask for help. We all need help with what has taken place here in recent times. And I really think that's how we can use the online and use COVID, which is negative, but really use it as a positive tool to really help out our community.
And I agree, Michael. It definitely, being telehealth has its advantages. Parents don't have to commute to the office anymore or figure out their schedules to be able to take their kids in or get the families in. So in that way, it has really opened up a lot of opportunity for families to get the help that they need. And on top of that, insurance companies have waived a lot of the copays and fees associated with therapy. And so right now, a lot of services are at $0 to them if they have insurance. And so that's definitely been an advantage as well. I think as a provider of young children, it has been limiting, just to be honest, because, with our younger kiddos, even with some of our older kids and our teens, the attention span is somewhat limited, and you're asking your kids to sit in front of a screen all day for school, and they've already got sensory issues, they've already got attention issues, and so to engage in a 45 to 50-minute session does become taxing for a lot of our kids, especially our younger ones that cannot sit still to begin with. And so as therapists, we've definitely had to be very, very creative in our approach, and we use a lot of interactive tools through telehealth to try to get them to be engaged. And a lot of it right now at this point, we're 1 year into the pandemic almost, and it's really just support at this point. It's like, I am here for you. This is your time. What is on your mind today? Or what issues are you having, and how can we start to work through step by step? And maybe it's just something simple like I can't sleep at night, right? Or it's something that happened at school that, I had a fight with somebody. And it's just just like take it step by step right now, and then just offer and give them space to do what they need to do in the therapy session. And for parents, a lot of it is just processing the stress and the trauma of all of this. And it's a lot of, I don't know how to manage everything that is on my plate right now. I barely have time to, do the things I need to do for being at home working and trying to take care of kids and virtual schooling at the same time. And then on top of that, you've got the different diagnoses that you're working with. And so it's just, we are recognizing that we're at burnout for a lot of families and a lot of people. And it really is a collective trauma that we're going through. And right now it is almost back to basics. It is, how can we get sleep every night? How can we get our exercise in every day? How can we have that routine in place? And how can we continue to just support each other and be there for each other, basically?
Julie, those are some really great points. And I just wanted to add, because, for example, I'm on the Affordable Health Care Act, Obamacare, and they don't even cover counseling. So I just wanted to mention to the group, for those of you who are either uninsured or underinsured, there is a program, and I don't know if our panelists are aware of it, Texans Recovering Together. And they do offer counseling. And so I wanted to mention that I am a huge advocate for counseling. I've had it at various times in my life, and I think it is so important. I have always said, if you don't have mental health, you don't have any health. Because if you can emotionally and mentally handle what is going on in your life, be it physical, financial, time management, if you have that mental health, you have that resilience and you're able to move forward. And I think that is so important. And Julie, now I know why your name sounds so familiar. You work with Lindsay. I love Lindsay. I've heard her present, and she's terrific.
She's my partner at Missouri City. Yes.
And Nicole is one of our LEND trainees.
And Nicole is one of my clinicians. Yes.
So wonderful practice. Wonderful. Yeah. I love playing people geography.
And we do a lot of presentations for the ADDA Fort Bend Association with Allison. So
yes, absolutely. Yeah. Thank you.
Julie, when I saw your name, I just told all the parents, I just said that this is a great, well, obviously for Jennifer and for Michael, I get to meet you guys today. But Julie, when I saw your name, I say, Allison, parents, you guys need to come to this workshop.
Oh,
it's amazing.
Thank you, Winnie. Now, your name looks familiar. I think we have met at some point, maybe.
I was with Lindsay. We put together that panel speakers for the ADDA group. There's where I met Lindsay, and I met you at one of your open house.
The open house. That's right, Winnie. Yes.
And Winnie, we do collaborate with Light and Salt. I have reached out to them a number of times, so it's a wonderful organization.
And Judy, I also want to bring up, I am so glad you brought up mental health. Fort Bend Community Church, we have a counseling center, and we work our senior pastor's wife. She's the director of our counseling center. She is a counselor herself, and she's also the director for the Christian Herald Counseling Center. And we are
having next week, because I'd like to find out more.
Right. And then, and in April, we actually have a very major mental health conference coming up.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. Send me the information.
I will.
Great.
That'd be great. Hazel.
Yeah.
Any other questions, or do you want to go with the Q&A? Because I know we have several.
Just want to check that Jennifer wanted to say anything, because I know she hasn't.
Oh, sure. Well, honestly, for COVID, the biggest change is that I tried to push everything online. And I'm trying to automate as many things as possible online, just because office visits are discouraged right now, at least until everybody in my family gets their second shot, first and second shot in some cases. And so, and of course, I'm sure the concerns are the same for your families as well. So, we're all masked for the clients who absolutely have to come in. We are all masked. We check temperatures, we have COVID waivers, we have, the bank teller screens across my conference tables. It's kind of a sea change, but we are actually, this has been my busiest estate planning year ever, as you can imagine. I've had to hire staff in the wake of this pandemic, which is incredible. when so many people are out of work, that I've actually grown from being 3 people at my law firm to about 7, and we're looking to hire 2 more people too in 1 year. So it's great for our firm. It's not great for a lot of people, but as long as our clients are comfortable with technology and can meet with Zoom, we can get state plans done. And that's the big takeaway from COVID.
Awesome. Yeah, it sounds like COVID has definitely given us a lot to think about moving forward as well. And it's such a big traumatic event, but there's also a lot of positives that we can gain for it as well.
And Hazel, I just wanted to jump in since we were talking about Lindsay. So for y'all that don't know Lindsay, she is a psychologist. She is the co-owner of my private practice in Missouri City. She actually does the testing and evaluation for the autism diagnosis. And we've got Nicole Moore, who is in finishing up her graduate program that is also able to diagnose. And we've got an LSSP on our team also that is able to evaluate and diagnose for autism. And the good news about telehealth is that if they are 6 and older at this time, we can't do the younger kiddos, but 6 and older, we can diagnose through telehealth. And so that is available to all the families if they are afraid of coming into the office or unable, or their pediatricians aren't able to do it at this point. That is a service that is available to the families.
That's great to know.
And I didn't know that. That's
Yeah.
incredible that you can diagnose
And
remotely.
it's a very thorough, and they have their ADOS. It's an actual specific test that they use to diagnose for autism. And on top of that, Lindsay shared with me, this is important for some of you guys to understand, is that a diagnosis from the school is sometimes different from a diagnosis from a private practitioner. What she explained to me is that a diagnosis for school will only sometimes determine if you meet eligibility for the special needs accommodations in the school system. A diagnosis by the school does not always give you the rights and protections of having a private practitioner diagnose you that would give you coverage in insurance and the ability to file for different disability rights and whatnot. So that is an important distinction for you guys all to understand, is that there may be some limitations to just being diagnosed in the school system. Not that it's a bad thing, but just so that you guys can understand that.
Yeah, thanks, Julie, for pointing that out, actually, because I am actually a graduate student in school psychology. I am Nicole's classmate
Yeah.
in Clear Lake. So there is one thing when you're looking at diagnosis in the schools, we are looking more of like the eligibility for educational need within the schools. We're not looking beyond functioning. So that is something I think it's important to think about, which I'm glad you brought that up as well. All right, so before we just move into any questions, I see there's a bunch of questions in the chat, but before we move into that, are there any like kind of like parting thoughts kind of situation that Michael, Jennifer, Judy, do you want to like just end it off with before we just go into those questions?
I'm just really thankful to be a part of this panel, and I'm really interested in hearing if anybody has any questions about any of this, and I'm just happy to be a resource. I don't have all the answers, obviously, but I can find out the best I can, if there are any specific questions that I don't know, so.
Same here, piggyback off what Julie said. I've learned so much just hearing from other practitioners, because usually, I don't know about Michael or Julie, we're in our own silos, especially here on the legal side. And as much as I try to work with the other organizations, I don't get to hear much from the counselors, the practitioners. And so to hear y'all's perspectives really informs a lot on how I'm going to approach my clients' cases in the future. So it's been incredibly beneficial for me, and I hope it's been beneficial for all of y'all.
Hazel, before you start questions, just a couple of notes. For those of you who might have to leave, I know we're all very busy. I've posted in the chat box the survey link. If you could please take just a minute and complete that survey. And then I also posted the PDF flyer and the link to register for session 2, which will be 2 weeks from today. So just wanted to make sure you had those notes, and not to call out Daryl, but Daryl, I private messaged you. And if you could just private message me back what name you registered with, I would really appreciate it. So go ahead, Hazel. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry. Michael, did you have any thoughts?
Oh, my final thoughts, I love the collaboration, and how this is flowed together. Definitely Julie and Jennifer, let's connect, because that's how we help as many people as possible get down the yellow brick road of success. So.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I want Winnie's information later on too,
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so let me
if she wants to share it with us.
let me just share this slide. So just basically any questions, but also just to give the context of all three of you. So if anyone wants to reach out as well, they're of course more than welcome to. And now let's just look through the questions. So I think the first question I saw was for Jennifer. What is the difference between special needs trust and ABLE account?
All right, so ABLE accounts are special account, I think tax deferred accounts for kids, and there's special needs trusts that are also state are trusts. So let me sort of back up and say a trust is a legal document that's kind of like I like to think of it as like a company. It's an LLC. Companies don't actually exist. They only exist on paper. Maybe there's a building, maybe there's employees, but when you first create it, it's really just a piece of paper. A trust is kind of the same thing. It's a legal document that holds property for the disabled child. And because the money is in the trust, it doesn't get counted against their resources for Medicaid purposes. That's kind of an oversimplification, but that's generally the gist of it. An ABLE account works in a similar way in that it's not intended to not count against the child for Medicaid purposes as well. But it's not it's not a trust. So for legal purposes, for estate planning, you can use an ABLE account, but for estate planning purposes, when you're writing up a will and things like that, I actually work with special needs trusts because legally they just work, in my mind, they work better with the will. That's kind of the 30-second difference between the two. You can talk to Allison at Consolidated Financial Planning Group and get the rundown on what the nitty-gritty about ABLE accounts and other financial planners to talk about like tax consequences and things like that, because I know she has many thoughts about them.
Thank you. So the next question is, what can we do early in regards to estate planning, financial planning, Medicaid qualifications, so that we are not scrambling when the child is 17 to 18 years of age?
That's a great question. So honestly, everybody, if you don't have a will, you should have a will, and that's if you have a special needs child or not. Having a will is one of the first steps you can have. If you know you have a child who you think might need to qualify for Medicaid later on, we need to talk about having special needs trust set up for that child and what the right strategy is there. Coming and talking to an attorney early is something that you should do. If you have children at all, you should probably have a will and maybe a trust for your minor children in place. And especially if you have a child that you think is going to turn 18 soon, I would, when that child hits high school, when that child is maybe 15, 16, 17 years old, talk to an attorney so that you can start getting in place the right kind of strategy. Because on top of having special needs trust, there's also things like supported decision-making agreements, where you don't have to get a full-blown guardianship if the child can actually make a lot of these important decisions for themselves, but they just need a little bit of help from a caretaker, like their parents, like a sibling, who can help walk them through some of the more complex things. So, but those are all things that we really do need to talk about and evaluate what's right for your child at that time. And also, I know we're talking about children specifically, but this also applies to older people in your lives as well. If you have a parent who, an older parent who might need to go into a nursing home, we need to have that discussion about how to best set up their own assets and transition their estate from one person, one family member to the next, but also to allow them to age in dignity and have control of their finances as well. So this really applies to not just children with disabilities, but also older adults who, just might be they might not have a Alzheimer diagnosis, but they might just be progressing and are 90 years old and just need a little bit of help. So we have a lot of strategies in the law that can help that.
Sounds like a lot of things to consider.
There's a lot of things to consider. And by the way, I'm trying not to get into it because I actually have a hour-long presentation solely on that. Yes. So come to my next presentation.
Yes.
If I could just add in, if anyone does have general questions on supported decision-making agreements, things like that, like you, Jennifer, we educate families on a broad range of disabilities from birth into adulthood. And supported decision-making is something that really can be very beneficial for your loved one, because guardianship has a whole set of legal ramifications. And I'm just not sure that parents are always informed. Jennifer's clients are, but I'm not sure that other people typically are. So if you have questions about that, we can also guide you on that.
All right, so next question, what other options do we have for education outside of the public school systems? How do we pay for a specialized school? Do we need to set up a trust? And how can we prepare for other options and making it more affordable? So I guess everyone can kind of jump in on this one.
It's difficult.
Yeah.
I mean, just seeing similar questions, it's very difficult. But I know that from an ABA standpoint, I know they're trying, sometime in March, they're trying to look at Medicaid covering some ABA. So I think the most important thing is advocacy. It's going to take a lot of us to really, make positive changes so that make it more affordable for folks. Because really, even school districts are struggling. And then they're obligated to do it. So the best thing is to really get involved with groups, advocacy groups, family to family network, because they're going to have the most up-to-date resources on who's doing what to find better paths.
Thank you, Michael. And I just wanted to add on that. The issue was that 2 years ago, the legislature passed a bill that said ABA is to be covered by Medicaid. The problem is there was then no money in the budget. So you can pass all the bills you want, but if there's no money in the budget, what good does it do you? And I'm glad you brought that up, Michael. That's a great point. And so they're having, in 2 weeks, they're having public testimony. And if you want to write in testimony, and if you want to do that, please email me and I will guide you on that. But you have to reach out to your legislators. I do have a list of grant funding resources that if anybody wants to email me, I'm happy to share that with you. Some pay for education, some pay for ABA therapy, some pay for tuition. All of the nonprofits are hit hard these last few years between Harvey, the pandemic, any recession. So it's been very, very challenging for nonprofits, but that's an excellent question that you all brought up, because it is a huge problem when you feel your public school is not meeting your child's needs and you want to send your child to private school. There is an excellent website called Texas Project First. And Texas and First are spelled out. There's no abbreviation. TexasProjectFirst.org. That explains to you in both English and Spanish what your rights are as a parent. And it's so important to empower yourself and know what your rights are so that you can properly advocate for your loved one. Thank you for allowing me to interject that.
Thank you for sharing that, Judy. It is one of the major challenges that a lot of our families go through is that public school is not cutting it. It's not working. Their kids hate it and they're not learning. And then the alternative is private schooling in most cases, which is, let's just be honest, it's expensive. And a lot of the families can't afford that. And so to know that there are grants out there, Judy, and I on the list that I am going to pass out to you guys has some vetted schools that we trust, that we know that kids have had good experiences on. Fusion Academy is one of those. The Nile Center is one of those. The Harris School, the Joy School, all of those really cater to some of this neurodiversity and differences in learning that really can help excel our kids academically and socially as well. But that I don't know the answer to that, which is it's expensive and it is a challenge. Some of these schools do offer stipends, some of them do offer scholarships of different types, and so advocacy is important. Reach out to your legislatures, like you said, Judy. Just keep pushing for yourself and talk to these different schools and see if there is some way they can work out a plan with you is kind of what I would recommend.
Yeah, and to piggyback on what Julie said, it's, I know the question asked if there's does a trust fund this? Well, yes, you can use the money in a trust to fund education. That's absolutely something you can do. But the problem is, and this is one of the reasons why you really need to talk to a financial advisor, is if you have these big financial goals where I know my niece is in an autism school here in Houston, and it costs $30,000 a year. That is private university tuition, $30,000, and she's what, 5 years old? And so, and that's just how much some of these schools cost, because it is intensive specialized education, and normal human beings, I don't think I could afford it. I'm an attorney, and it is expensive. It's a lot of money, and the answer is I don't have a way to fund that. The lawyer literally creates the legal document, but the financial advisors and are the ones who work on bringing in the money piece, and they fund the trust. So that's how that relationship works. And you really do need to speak with a financial advisor to see if you can work out ways to afford these goals for your children of having a private education, because they are extremely, extremely expensive.
Thank you for all those resources. There's another question. What resources are there for siblings? This is a struggle for them. So where can you find the supports for siblings?
I know that there are sibling support groups out there also. I'm sure Hope for Three and the ADDA Fort Bend Association. APARA Autism Services in Sugar Land may offer some sibling support groups as well as parent support groups. That's also on the resource list. At our center, we offer support for siblings as well. We haven't formed an official group for that, but if there is enough need, that's definitely something that we can put together and offer to the community. But that is certainly an important aspect of helping the family kind of get through some of these issues.
If I could just chime in again. So siblings, I agree, this is a huge issue because the parents and the family, they're so focused on the child who has a disability that oftentimes the sibling is, their needs are maybe compromised. So there is a sibling support group. I can't think of the name of it. It's something Texas Sibs or something, but if whoever asked that question wants to email me. But if you look on Facebook, there are, and you even put on Facebook something like, you know, sibling support groups for special needs or something like that, I'm sure it's going to pop up. But if you want to email me, I can give you the name of that. I just can't remember the specific name, but there are specific support groups in place.
Perfect. So is there also resources for children regarding the neurodiversity movement, one that targets mainly the elementary age, as well as children with disabilities?
What was that question, Hazel? I'm sorry.
The question is there a resource for children regarding the neurodiversity movement, one that targets the elementary age children as well as children with disabilities?
To my knowledge, when I think of neurodiversity movement, it's usually for young adults when you think of employment. You know, I do think it's trending younger and younger, but really it's for all ages. It's really just the acceptance that, you know, children on the spectrum deserve the right to have meaningful employment and not just work as interns. So I think I would just look at the movement as a whole. And especially it's good to start now when kids are younger, so that as they get older, there's paths for them to gain meaningful employment or meaningful independence.
And I think it matters too. One of the things that we promote at Family to Family Network is that once the parents have understood advocacy and what it means to advocate for their loved one, either in the school, in the community, their place of worship, in friendships, that we have parents pass those advocacy skills onto their child when they feel it's age appropriate for them. And because parents aren't going to be around forever. And you have to not enable your child, but you have to empower your child, because parents aren't going to be going to them with school. Or if they go to a friend's house and play, the parent isn't going to be there. So it's about passing those advocacy skills onto the child.
Sure. The next one's a bit more financial in terms of like all the services mentioned, and quality services require deep financial resources. How can we access these without having to file for bankruptcy?
Well, talk to your financial planner. Advocate with your legislatures to have more resources for special needs education and mental health support services. Like one of the organizations that we mentioned here, Texana basically is entirely funded by our tax dollars. Well, maybe not entirely. They do sliding scale now, but you know, if more money is made available by the legislatures to address these issues, then parents wouldn't have to pay as much for them.
I know that we're getting, you know, tight on time, but one thing that I wanted to add is to that, in answer to that question, I know that as parents, we all want to do the most and the best that we can for our kids. I completely get it. I've been a single parent for 20 years. And the first few years of my son's life, I was able to put him in private school. I then was faced with the choice of having to use public school. Elementary school was great. 6th grade was great. 7th grade, there started to be some issues. 8th grade was awful. And I struggled because being a single parent, I couldn't afford to put my son in private school when I know that would have been best for him. In high school, the teachers were amazing. It's that the school culture was so big. It didn't allow my son to form any friendships. That is something that I live with every day, and one of my biggest regrets. And my son is now going to be 26 next month. So I understand the journey as parents of that guilt that you feel that you want to do more, And financially, it's just not possible. I think it's important to remember as parents, you are doing the best that you can with the resources that you have available. Work with your school, work with your teachers. Believe me, some of the private schools I sent my son to, I thought they were going to be great, and they weren't. They were not. And I think that there is no such thing as a bad school district. There's no such thing as a bad school. It's the relationship that your child has with those teachers or teacher and those connections made. Reach out to your teachers, identify who you are, have a meeting with them, have what we call a one-page profile. What makes my son work best? What makes my daughter have a great day? What are the signs to look for when they're having challenges? It's all about that communication. So if you have to have your child in public school, and supposedly your neighborhood school is the one your child has to go to, and everybody says, oh my God, they have a terrible reputation. You know what? Teachers, like people who work in nonprofits like myself, we do this for the outcome, not for the income. And you can build that relationship. And that's really, really important. So I want to encourage you as parents, if you're having trouble, reach out to me. Let's brainstorm. Let's see what ways we can work together so that you can get the most out of the school system that you're having to work with. And I hope that helps, because I've had to make those tough choices, and it's brutal.
Thank you, Judy.
And that, yeah, and I just wanted to piggyback off of that. And just as an aside, I before I went to law school, I was actually a public education advocate. And I worked a lot with a lot of different schools. And I would just absolutely echo what Judy said, is that honestly, the teacher matters more than the school. Like, just don't look at the overall test scores or whatever. Just reach out to the teachers, find out who's going to be educating your child, and form that relationship with them. Because if you can work with a good teacher can overcome so much adversity and so much. It makes such a huge difference. It can basically, the effects of a good teacher are felt for 5-10 years after that one teacher has had that child. So definitely reach out to your public schools.
We have a teacher who my son had in early elementary school, and she's on this call today. That's how much relationships matter.
Thank you for giving such great advice. I'm just gonna take one last question that's a bit more generic. I know there's some specific questions out there for the different speakers. As listed, we do have their individual emails here. So if you would like to go ahead and email them your specific questions, they have already shared that they are more willing to get in touch. So please do. So last question I'm just gonna talk about is, are there any parent support groups for Asian families? And I do know that we do have people from Light and Salt and hopefully FFASN as well. If you want to jump in and share, feel free to.
Hey, so I already replied to Yuko. I already sent
Okay, perfect. Yeah, so we have that. Does anyone want to share any more?
I don't know off the top of my head, Hazel, but another place to look into is the Chinese Community Center. They may run some sort of support groups there. I'm not for sure, but
no, we all work together basically.
Okay.
It's from Hope Foundation. So Hope Clinic has a behavioral health center, but they don't. Obviously, it's in Chinatown, it's in Bel Air.
Yeah.
But behavioral health center, I don't believe has any Chinese speaking counselor.
Okay.
So
Okay.
Light and Salt really is the place to go to. We offer Medicaid support. We offer support for both children and seniors and families. It's very extensive in terms of what we do. And then also for my church, Fort Bend Community Church, we offer both a junior and a senior program. And for the senior program, we currently offer a bi-weekly free art classes. And, so if you know of any Asian family and they have an adult child with special need, feel free to refer them over to me.
Okay, great, Winnie. Thank you.
Yeah, you're
Thank
very
you so
welcome.
much.
No, thank you. I really appreciate all the resources I'm learning today. And Julie, I really appreciate your story and just for sharing. Couldn't agree more. Yeah.
So once again, I
Thank
know
you.
we didn't address all the questions. I know there was some specific about ABA to Julie and Jennifer as well. So feel free to reach out to the speakers once again. And so I would just like to thank everybody for coming today. We really appreciate taking a little bit of your time this Saturday morning. This is our next talk that's happening in 2 weeks by Robin Reddy, who is a master's in special education. She was a teacher, she's an advocate as well. So feel free to hop on in if you feel that this has impacted you in any way. And like I said, Jennifer will also have an individual talk later on, I believe somewhere in April, that she'll be sharing more specifically about the financial resources.
And I've also put in the chat box the link to the survey, as well as the link to register for session 2. And Daryl, if you could private message me, I just don't realize who you are and who you registered with. So if you could please just tell me what name you registered with so I can mark you as present. I would really appreciate it. And that is for the person who's named Daryl. You know, I've done a lot of presentations and a lot of panels, and I got to tell you, you all rock. You are amazing. And I love how you are so supportive of each other. I love how you cheer each other on, how you really believe in collaboration. And this was an excellent, excellent panel. So on behalf of Family to Family Network, Jennifer, Julie, Michael, thank you. And I know that I will be reaching out to you in the future because I am always looking to expand my network. Michael, I already knew about you, of course. Julie, I knew about your practice. You are on our list of suggested counselors if people want counseling. Missouri City Family is. And Jennifer, I would love to add you to our list of attorneys. So
Absolutely.
So definitely, because like you, we go with who we trust and we go with who other families have suggested. So I am so happy that we all have done this. And Hazel, thank you. Incredible job.
Thank you, everybody.
Yay.
Yay, go Hazel.
Thank you. All right, so that's it for today. Once again, we're going to send the summary notes out in about a week's time, as well as the resources that we've talked about today, and it will also be translated in Mandarin and Vietnamese if anyone wants them. Because of the translation, we do ask for your patience because we do need to translate these as well. And feel free to share these resources with anyone that you think might be helpful. And this will be continued for the next few talks as well. All right. Thank you, everyone. Have a great Saturday.
Thank you. And again, if your
Thank you.
question didn't get
Thank you.
answered, just email the presenters. They can answer them for you.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you guys. Have a great weekend.
Bye.